Everything is personal right here. Everything is personal right here.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to another episode of Everything is Personal. And today our guest is Elijah Nissenboim. How you doing?
Good.
Did I get it right?
Yes, a little boimy, little
Too much boim. I knew.
Nissenboim.
I caught myself as I was
Yeah.
saying it. Too much
Yeah.
emphasis on the boim.
I've had a lot of names, and I even back in the day, I legally changed my last name. So I've been and partly because Nissenboim I was in the music business. It was not an easy name for people to pronounce, but I have no problem with people mispronouncing my name or picking the wrong name.
There's no other Nissenboims in the music industry.
Probably not. I mean, but there's not a lot of Nissenboims. Well, Nuss is nut and Baum is tree. Nussbaum, that's common.
Nussbaum,
But
yeah.
Nissen is plural, is nuts, and Boim is trees. So family of nut trees.
Got it. Better than family of nuts, right?
Yeah. Well, that was kind of what, yeah. Anyway.
I know, I'm kidding. So I wanted to ask you, I want to get into like what you're doing now, but I'm really curious about your book, The Trauma Code. One of the things that people always have this conversation with me, a very small percentage of people sort of know their purpose. And what I mean by that is, like, I have musicians on sometimes, and somebody picked up a guitar and said, "Man, this is what I'm going to be doing the rest of my life." Yeah. It's very rare to find that. Most people don't really know their life's purpose. So I'm curious about the hidden map of how the trauma code is related to finding your life's purpose.
Yeah, well, I'll come about this in a different way because I like that your podcast is different than other podcasts. So a couple things. First thing that just came to me is that I think there's almost two kinds of people. The people who are born like, I'm one of those people, like, I just am what I am and kept going to those things. I've always sort of known in my way what my life purpose is. And then I have to deal with the consequence of that. If you're Bob Dylan, we were all watching the movie A Complete Unknown. You can't, that's what you're going to be. If you're going to be Shakespeare or whatever, as far as work goes. But then there are those that have to contend with trying to figure out why they're here. And so I think there's those two things. And then I would secondly say, I don't think of a life purpose as a job. I think of it as a state of consciousness when you're being the you that you're meant to be. And I don't think it's about being significant or powerful or influential or important in the world. It's whatever you're designed to do and whoever you're designed to be, so that when you're being that person, you're like, this is me. And the name of the book, which you didn't say, but is The Trauma Code. Wait, what's the name? Uncover the hidden map to your life's true purpose. I mean, one last piece before I answer your question. So 25 years ago, I was married to an Aquarian, and I knew a lot about astrology. So her and her sister's astrology were identical by 1 minute. But they had just found this guy who read, his name's Richard Unger, who read fingerprints, and they go in your hands before you're born. And he discovered the system to name your life purpose based on your fingerprints. And she gifted me a session with him, and it was an immediate yes, and like, I'm going to learn this guy's work. And also my wife and her twin like had completely different sets of fingerprints. And I learned this guy's system, and it was sort of how I got thrust out into the world, because I could look at people's fingerprints and know what they were doing here. And I was already a healer and a good talker. So, but one thing that I understood about his system was that since the fingerprints go in your hands before you're born and they predate life experience, they're drawing out like a story that wants to happen. So when people say, oh, this thing happened to me and that's why I'm this way, well, the fingerprints say, you know, there's a reason for that. So, and that your life purpose, like it there's names in his system, like an artist or a leader, but it's not about a job. So the way I see the trauma code after working with people for 35 years is that the problem is always the solution. The worst thing that's happened to people always tends to be the thing that's, if you're able to do this, is to gain wisdom from your experience by taking that terrible thing that happened and like learning something from it. So on one hand, I worked with people and I could see that people had trauma, which are just unresolved experiences, not big or small, remembered, not remembered. It doesn't have to be like abuse or something. It can be anything. But because it's unresolved, that acorn that wants to be an oak tree uh, uh, changes its path because the energy of who you are is locked up. It's until it's resolved. So here I was working with people to help them to change their life. And yet I could look at my own life and also look at the experiences that people had. And I could see that these experiences were necessary lessons to get to the thing that they were supposed to get to. So that also applied to myself. And in realizing that, and then just the nature of the work that I do in breathwork and stuff, I could just see every single thing that people said, everything that people would go through in the work, breathwork in particular, I could see a value in it. So I think I never use the word trauma. My teacher who first showed me breathwork didn't use it, but since it's become like a word in the last 3 years during the pandemic, I just realized, oh, the trauma code, it's like you have your phone. If you swipe the code, you unlock it and you get everything that's inside it. Yeah. And it's the same for you. If you can unlock the reason for your trauma, and accept it and use it, it becomes usable energy. And if you don't, you just live in the adverse effects of trauma, which are all the various limitations that people suffer from: risk, feeling averse, risk averse, wrong perception, etc.
Yeah. Yeah. It's sort of like the hero's journey in a way,
It
because
totally is.
the
That's it.
hero has an obstacle and it's sort of your crossroads. What do you do with that? Do you overcome it, learn from that experience, and step into yourself that you're meant to be?
Yeah.
Or do you become a victim and sort of go the other way? I was wondering, since you're saying that, how much does societal pressures, and we know I'm not talking about a vocation, a job
Yeah.
in your purpose, but how much does societal pressures actually get you off your track on finding that purpose? What I mean by that, let me just explain my question a little bit more.
You're talking about conditioning. You're asking about
exactly.
conditioning. Yeah, I know. I get your question.
Yeah.
But let me just go back for 1 second because you use the word overcoming it. And I feel like the part of the conditioning in our culture is that we overcome trauma by facing this demon, and like we think of it as a masculine sort of a strength thing. But certainly in the breath work I do, which is hyperventilating for an hour, like you have to me, the way the hero's journey is not only masculine, it's about being able to feel things as they come up. So I just want to say that I don't think we even overcome it. We just have the courage to allow the energy to resurface and repattern so you're not locked up. But you bring up a very intelligent question, because there's trauma and there's conditioning. And conditioning is the worser in some ways because it's the drip, drip on the day-to-day basis of being trained. Doesn't mean people did it because they wanted to hurt you. Like your parents, you mentioned, you have a family that was in World War II. Like, of course, you're going to be shaped by that, and you want to make sure that the people around you are safe. And because of that, often to be safe and secure, we are guided away from our uniqueness, our individuality. And just as a side note, I, during the pandemic, started actually working with people in China, doing breath work with people in China. I've been to China many times, but I never did my work there. And like they have a culture that values the collective, not the individual. So when I would start to work with people and their individual experiences were coming up, they had no idea what to do with it. Like for us, we have podcasts, we can sit and talk about this freely and value our own things that have happened to us, but for them, they're told really to overcome it. So I had this quite a job trying to figure out how to communicate to them the value of the things they were experiencing, because all they wanted to know was how could they make it stop, whatever.
Yeah.
So
Well, it makes sense. And along what I was saying with this hero's journey, and
yeah,
you're right, I probably use it in a more masculine sense, but I'll use myself as an
part of
example.
conditioning.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. So I'll use myself as an example of this. I came from an abusive household, a lot of anger, a lot of trauma, probably generational trauma since,
yeah,
Holocaust and all that stuff. But the release of that happened during forgiveness. So it's not about did I have to overcome and fight my way through that? It's about
yeah.
the connection to, well, why am I given this power? I'm ready to forgive this, let it go. And as soon as I did that, and it wasn't like sort of instantaneous, but it took some time with the process. Now I had a different relationship with my father and other people around me, and that anger subsided, started going away,
Mhm.
and then clarity started coming. So I think it's also, from my standpoint, it's maybe going through that journey of understanding what is pulling me back and recognizing that, and maybe overcoming isn't the right way to identify it. It's to be able to identify, to be able to recognize it, and maybe let it
Yeah.
go, kind of
Well,
thing.
I think you're just picking when you were talking, you were just picked a word because this is the challenge of talking about big things. We have to say some simple general things, but it's a lot more nuanced than that. But to speak to, not that you asked a question, but I think that I know what you're speaking of. And I think that religion, of course, is a kind of conditioning. So we could say, well, you just need to practice forgiveness. But that's to me, a step that comes later because forgiveness kind of happens. You can't really do it. You have to get to it. So it's the process of getting to it. And I think that process is really about acceptance. Like, I think the antidote to the resistance that we live in, you have trauma, and then you have conditioning, and you come from a family of people who are angry, so then you have a message that your anger is bad, so now you're going to repress anger, and then people are just going to keep walking all over you, and like until you accept what it is that you're feeling. So we live in resistance because the programming, both from trauma and conditioning, tells us to do whatever we need to do to stay away from the pain of the past. And so we live constructing, a threat assessment at all time through the mind. It's what the mind's designed to do. Make sure you're safe and secure. And you live in a limitation of threat assessment, let's just say. But the antidote to that is the ability, and it's so simple, but it's the most advanced practice. It's acceptance. Like, whatever I feel, like, I'm not going to say, look, Len did it. It's Len's fault that I'm feeling this way. I'm like, it doesn't matter who brought me here. Like, I just feel this way. So that's one part of resistance. And another part of resistance is just the dogma and the belief systems you have in your mind that you don't know about, that make you see life without being open to the fact that you probably have huge blind spots. I mean, we all do. So
I wanted to kind of go backwards and talk about your origin story. So, where did you grow up?
Toronto, Canada. I'm a good middle class Jewish Canadian kid. Seemingly not too much trauma on the outside. Uh,
Were your parents together? Do you have siblings growing
yeah,
up?
so I was born in 63, 2 weeks after Kennedy's assassination. So if you look at the astrology, it fits. But I have an older brother, 3 years. My mother was volatile and abusive with him, not with me physically, but I was sensitive, so I sort of watched it. My father, kind of a rags to riches story, and his father had affairs and passed some bad checks and stuff. So my father wanted to be like the perfect father, and he held that up for about 15 years, and then ended up having a long-term affair with his secretary. And I was the one that found out about it. So that's a little bit, I wanted to be a musician right from the get-go. And my house was volatile too. There was a lot of anger, but not all of it was expressed. There was a lot of like, at least for me, like going behind the door and like being in my room by myself. So I did end up becoming a musician.
What
And
was so when you were, and I apologize to interrupt,
yeah,
just from a
yeah,
musician
yeah.
standpoint, was it a musical household? Were people playing music? Were you
No,
what was
no.
how did you get exposed to
Such an
that?
anomaly. Well, my mom bought the cheapest piano she could find out of the Sears catalog. I think it was $300, a Willis upright, for her to play and my brother. And when I was about 5, and they stopped, and I just kept going. Well, eventually, my father became the president of he created the largest contact lens manufacturing in Canada. He had 10 factories. So my parents became really wealthy, but they wouldn't get me a new piano. So I had this dinky upright that I banged on, and I wasn't particularly disciplined. And I had a lot of, I mean, I don't know if I'm on the spectrum. I think about it recently, like, because I have certain things. I remember phone numbers from my childhood. If you tell me your astrological chart, your birth information, I can calculate a chart in my head, but I can't remember words to my own songs. I lose my phone and my keys routinely. So there was I failed almost all of school. Didn't read my first book till I was 15. So I have just some weird things. So I was living in this family situation that was it it was very confusing, and because they had money, I didn't they didn't want to get me my mother didn't want to get me a new piano, so I was the only one that played music. And this is the 1970s, so I wanted to be in a band and all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
And so when you started playing music, was there a specific type of music that you were drawn to that you wanted to play,
Yeah.
being in a band?
Well, one, the introduction to my book Trauma Code, I tell the story about piano teachers hitting my hands with ruler,
Yeah.
and how that led into my healing process. But my first concert was the Guess Who, in 1972. It scared me. I was 9 years old because there was the band the Stampeders. Do you remember them? Because we're close to the sweet, sweet city woman. And they had
Oh,
like
yeah.
a siren going around, and I was just terrified. And there was this weird smell in the air. But I became a big fan of the Guess Who. And then in high school, I couldn't fit in my rich Jewish high school, and I ended up with the Stoners. So really got into progressive rock. Yes, Genesis, Supertramp.
Yeah.
And then I found Bob Dylan a little later, and I really kind of never really left the singer songwriter universe. But I have really eclectic tastes. I've studied Indian music, but when I went toward the music business, I was a songwriter. I played piano and guitar, and I sang, and I was trying to get a record deal being that guy. I had
So
a top 10 song on the Canadian college charts in 1990 because I couldn't get a record contract. And the kind of weirdo that I am, I went, I decided to make my own record company, put my own record out, which in 1990, there was no such thing. Like I had to go to the pressing plant. And I remember the guy, African American guy, like not only being derisive, like just telling me to like F off. Like he wasn't going to like make my, and I begged him. And so they pressed 1,000 of my CDs. I might have been the first person ever to do such a thing. And then I just sent it to all the college radio stations that were just beginning and they were playing it.
Wow.
Yeah. So,
So, so as you're going and pursuing your musical career, I mean, there's probably, some, however you connect to success, there's some successes and maybe some not so successes as you go
mostly
through
not so successes. Yeah. It's the
it. So
music business.
it's a music business,
Yeah.
right? So what, and your purpose, you're clear on that. How did you discover sort of your personal development of yourself? Because
Yeah.
you're hitting these walls, right? Like, so there's friction. And I'm still sort of going on this hero's journey because now there's a crossroads and there's things you have to do, and it's self-work, I believe.
Yeah. I didn't at every turn in my life, I was always helping people and I was always able to deeply see under the surface. Even if I was playing in front of people, I would see the one person who didn't like it. I could pick up on their energy. My mom told this story that when I was 5 years old, we had a Jewish cookbook, so we were going to sell around the neighborhood. And I sold the most because she said that I told her that when people opened the door, I knew whether they were going to buy one or not and what I would need to say to get them to. So I always had this sensitivity, and my songs were about some kind of transformation. And when I was playing, I played in like a rock and roll piano bar. I would be sending people home, saying you should. I ended up getting fired from that because I was like, you need to. So there was always this feeling that the music, when it came to performing was secondary to my relationship energetically with people about what they needed to fulfill their life. And I didn't, the first, up until 25 or 26, when I first discovered the breath work, I was just living in reaction to not knowing how to live in society in general, let alone my family. And I loved my heroes musically because they represented a kind of an ability to transform elements in some way. And there was, music then there was a cultural part of it. But when I did the breath work for the first time, and the other thing is, in the music business, it's a lot of drugs and alcohol, and I couldn't really play well enough anyway, and I couldn't really handle it. So much as I like to do those things, I wasn't really built for that lifestyle, and I found myself always on the side of counseling every one of my friends who were,
Don't smoke that joint, put it down. That kind of
yeah,
thing.
I mean,
Or pass it over here.
yeah. So when I did the breath work, I had this very direct experience, divine experience, and without anything. And it kind of, it's not like my entire direction of my life changed in that moment, not my entire life, because the fact that I'm here 35 years later talking about breath work, like I couldn't, that I was still a musician for a long time, but at the time, like it was the beginning of a huge reorienting that, and I think as far as, excuse me, being someone with a purpose, like I was working on one thing that I wanted for myself, but existence was pushing me always. So now at 61, it's very obvious who I am and what I am to myself. I'm not saying that I'm getting better at being that in that purpose, because I too had lots of conditioning, even relationships. Like at 61, it's the first time where relationship is not part of what I'm doing with my life. And I'm so 100% focused on the relationship, the transpersonal relationship with people around fulfilling their life purpose. And I'm happier than I've ever been.
How did you mentioned breathwork? How did you get introduced to breathwork
Yeah.
first time?
Well, so fun fact. So I was playing in this piano bar. Next door, there was a massage place. And I thought, I'm going to try massage. I mean, it's the mid 20s. And I made friends with this woman. I used to see her all the time. And then she invited me to her house. And I met her husband. His name was Tom Lodge. Tom's grandfather, Sir Oliver Lodge, invented the radio. Didn't get the patent for it, but he invented it, and the telegraph, if anybody knows what that is. And Tom himself, the BBC wouldn't play the rock groups of the day in the early 60s, and he was the lead DJ on a pirate radio station off the coast of Britain, which they made a movie about.
Yeah.
So I met him. I didn't know anything about him in music. They had been in India with Osho, and they were moving to California. And she said, if you help me put stuff in storage, I'll give you a massage. I said, great. And she said, well, what about this breath work? And I heard work, and I was like, I don't think so. And I said, okay. And he shared the breath work with me, which is basically like mouth breathing for an hour, really strong on the inhale. And it was terrifying, profound, difficult, enlightening. It was the most powerful experience of my life. I mean, it still is one of the most powerful experiences. I just don't have a lot of trauma to clear. But that experience, he left. He went to California a week later, and maybe 9 months later, I got this thing in the mail. He was having a training in San Francisco. So I came out to the Bay Area, and I was like, my wife was 8 months pregnant. I'm like, I want to move here. And she was a hard no, but I trained, went back for a year, and then I moved out to the Bay Area, where I've been living since 1994.
Got it. So when did you decide that you're going to take the practice that you're studying and learning that's working for you and sort of make it your own version of the practice? What's the name? I just want to make sure I get
Effiji.
Effiji.
Effiji. An effigy, GY, is like a mask that represents something else, like you burn an effigy. And JI in India is like a term of endearment or respect. So it's like a loving dissolution of the masks. So I was with my teacher. I immediately just started breathing people, and it just became my life. So I was sort of toggling between music and breathwork. And then when I moved to California, I just started sort of running my teacher's thing. And then I left him. And in 2001, at the time I had a center in San Francisco, and I was getting people coming from other breathwork techniques. There wasn't a lot of it back then. I mean, it was not a mainstream word. Even yoga wasn't really a thing. But I tried every breathwork technique there was, particularly in the mouth breathing lineage. And so when I left my teacher, I just found what I thought was the best way to do it. And I gave it a name, and that's Effiji.
So there's a lot of breath work. You're already mentioning it, a lot of different breath works. Like there's a bunch of Taoist practices, and it's becoming more mainstream, I guess. Maybe because maybe I live in LA, so it's mainstream. Maybe it's not mainstream in Kansas somewhere. I don't know, but
it's not mainstream. But if you are a seeker in Kansas or Idaho, or whatever, you will find somebody. Like I've been to Boise, Idaho. Like there, and I went there because it was someone who had studied breathwork with someone else and liked my technique better. So there is breathwork in other places. But just for your listeners, breathwork, it's very simple. The lungs are the only organ in the body that you can operate manually. So the manual use of breathing, inhale through the nose, inhale through the mouth, inhale, nose and mouth, left side and right side. You have pretty much every breathwork technique that's out there, and holding the breath and that sort of thing. So breathwork is a very generic term, but our world is in a beautiful way upside down now. Like people are definitely realizing, like, if I can avoid going to the Western medicine, I will. And like your breathing is your life. So it's accepted by Western medicine, either through Qigong or meditation, or just in general, deep breaths or whatever, that breath work is an acceptable preventative measure. But my technique, and anybody who does mouth breathing, it's not it's not a hack. It's very hard to do. It's very rigorous. Would you like to do 10 breaths with me right
Sure.
now? Okay.
Sure. I will. Just I
Yeah.
want to say one thing before
Yeah.
we go in.
Yeah,
I want to
yeah.
jump in
Please.
just
Sorry,
so I
I'm
can
doing
clarify.
a lot of talking because
No,
you
no,
excite
I
me.
definitely I want to do this with you, but the reason why I bring this up is because there's so many different, you mentioned techniques, but like you have people out there that now they specialize in that. So you have like the Wim Hof, and everybody
Yeah.
downloads the Wim Hof app, or box breathing is becoming so
Yeah.
it's coming out, or breath of fire. Like I remember
Yeah.
I had meditative practices. We would
Right.
just breathe for 45
Yeah.
minutes, and people would have these extraordinary experiences, like breaking down,
Yeah.
crying, and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So I just want people to understand that there's real science behind this. We can get into the science of how it affects your nervous system, et cetera, and it addresses chronic stress. But that's why I wanted to make sure that people don't like lump it in. So there's breath work, but there's different types
Breath
of
and work is the conscious use of breath, and it's very generic, and it doesn't mean anything. It's like if somebody says, I do yoga." Well, what kind of yoga? There's like so yeah. Well, so I'll just say that pranayam, breath fires from that, like the Kundalini yoga people, Wim Hof, there's particular functions to them. But there's a kind of a mental activity of like mastering your breathing to master your body. This is not what my technique is about, even amongst other mouth breathing techniques, because with Wim Hof, you do it because he's most popular, a certain amount of inhales and then exhale. So my technique, and then we'll do it, and I will put on my original sounds so that, because otherwise you won't hear me, but then you might need to mute yourself. It already is on. Okay. So you're breathing in your mouth on the inhale in the center of the chest. And there's nothing to think about. This is about going past the mind and clearing the garbage and that's in the way between you and who you really are. So all we're going to do is we're just going to do 10 breaths. Yeah. So as full as you can on the inhale, mouth open and into the center of the chest. You ready? Here we go. Yep. Great. You can just close your eyes and take a little pause while I just to get feel the power of that. So in my particular technique, you do this laying down only with guidance for an hour without stopping. So it's 1 hour nonstop. So that first moments of doing this is the beginning of that journey. And I will say also, if people go to my website, the front page of the website has a free, we just put this up, a 3-minute tutorial. You can do 3 minutes with me and experience it. And you could do it every day. It's very powerful, even 3 minutes. So.
Yeah, I think I can, I'm just trying to visualize how that would be for an hour, because at some point you can feel tingling in your fingers and all that stuff. So how is it working physiologically and neurologically as well?
Yeah, well, let's so two questions, two answers. So first of all, you can't visualize what it'll be because it's your mind that thinks it knows about something it doesn't know. The first few minutes are the hardest because it's a dissolution. You could feel it, right? Like you start to feel the energy moving through
Oh
in your
yeah.
head and everything. And that's the beginning. But after about 3 minutes, you enter an altered state. Like the this the biggest part of my work happens after we do the breath work. And just to
Mm,
say that the mind, we are so conditioned to be in this linear mind that it thinks that it's going to do this practice by being in control of your experience. And that's what's powerful about this. It's kind of like doing psychedelics, except there's no external stimulation. You're doing it from your own willingness. So after 3 minutes, the mind starts to go away, and then your reality of doing it changes, and it's actually breathing for an hour is easy as long as you are willing to encounter what will arise along the way. So that's one. Now, your question about what's happening, I'm going to just, I'm going to kick the can down the field a little bit. But one, to say, like, I'm a mystic, so I'm not really a scientist. When I had my center in San Francisco, it was in the hospital area there, and doctors would come in and argue with me. I have doctors in my family. I've been yelled at, like hyperventilating, like, I I I would say, I've studied. I'm a mystic with experience, and I don't want to pretend to explain a subject that I'm not in charge of. I'll say that there is nothing more powerful in your life than your breathing. You cannot live without it. And within oxygen is the power of the universe because it gives you life. But like your life, it's a potential. You have to extract it, meaning you right now you're just breathing. You can just go on with your life. You're going to keep breathing. You're going to keep living your life. That isn't fulfilling your life purpose. You have to get the chi, the force of the universe, out of the oxygen. So the conscious use of breathing is the extraction of that energy. And this is something I could explain, but it's complex. And I've studied. I've been to China 21 times. I know a lot about other systems like Chinese medicine, but I think that this practice with me anyway, or inside the Effiji world, I'm if you need that kind of explanation, you should go somewhere else because I'm not really good at dealing with the skeptics in that way. If you lay down and breathe, you're going to have a profound experience. Who gives a shit how it works? If it
yeah.
works,
No, I agree with you. I'm actually trying to I guess address these scientific minds because like I had a Sadhguru
why?
was talking.
I have a curious question. Why? Why do we want to address those scientific?
I'll tell you why, because
Yeah,
I'm a sciencey guy, so I like systems. So
yeah,
I understand the interconnection. And like I
yeah,
was gonna say, like Sadhguru was saying that, at some point breathing activates pineal gland, same kind of thing that
yeah,
you would do when you're hallucinating, as you mentioned. So the reason why I'm trying to bring this up is because there's an imbalance in somebody's body. Homeostasis is out of whack. So they're not in balance. And breathing allows you to have certain oxygen. There's other things that are benefits of that to get you back to balance because people are going through all these different, I guess, chronic stress, PTSD, all these
yeah.
different things. And if you're just telling somebody, and I don't know, maybe you're absolutely right. I'm just saying, as looking at the other side, if you're saying, oh, just breathe. And people are like, yeah, right. I've been suffering this for 30 years. I have chronic stress in my work. You don't even know what you're talking about. So if I can give them, yes, it's going to
Yeah,
work,
but,
but
just sorry to interrupt you, but if somebody has that, first of all, it's not that I haven't had these conversations, and I've had pulmonologists as facilitators. So And I've had people who had a woman, she was the head pediatric nurse at a hospital in Miami, and she hooked herself up to machines and did all kinds of stuff. It's just not my subject,
Yeah.
but I value it. I value somebody who could, particularly right now at this moment in time in our history, like somebody who had the ability and interest to do that. But if you're suffering, I can help you. So for me, if you got PTSD and you've tried everything, whatever, like the answer is going to be whether it helps you or not. Like that's for tens of thousands of people in 35 years. That's all I'm really interested in is can this change your life? Because the part of the mind that needs that information. Look, we went through this pandemic and like so confusing as to what the facts and the truth were, right? And now it's like it's the complexity of it. You know that 100 years from now they're going to go what vaccines? Like I mean, 100 years ago, like they told you got to cut a toothache, some pliers and whiskey, and you're dead. So we're not we're in an unfoldment in our science and medicine, and certainly there are people, not me, because I failed most of school. Like I'm not the one to do it, but I feel the thing that is my something I live with like on a daily basis is like, why is this not the done to the culture what yoga did? Like, and I want to be at the head of that, but like I live in relationship to people's resistance. That's my whole work life. I'm starting a retreat next week. I have 12 people coming, 5 days, but then we're spending the year together. And this is the first time where I limited the amount of participants because I want to I want to transmit individually. And much as I would love to still be popular, it's hard for me to do my work with 50 or 100 people. Like I'm good at the individual understanding. So anyway, in that work that I'm doing, like all I'm in relationship with is the resistance in people. And sometimes it takes a whole year to help someone to be open. So I feel like if somebody is cynical or they need the proof, that's just a lot of mind. And there are so many places you can go to get help, but I'm a little bit like, I'm very much in my way out of the matrix. Like I'm the last stop. I'm I'm a gentle little nice Canadian Jewish boy, but I'm very fierce in my work and I'm a lot to deal with when it comes to the work because I'm interested in trauma release and what will happen from that. And I know that there's no real value to the mind except to serve the soul. And if I can give you the soul, then what the fuck do I need the mind for?
Yeah. Yeah. And
And I come from a
science.
family of Jewish intellectuals. I'm another Eastern European Ashkenazi Jew like you. My family of bookshelves full of books. And I've written 3 books, but I didn't read my first one until I'm 15.
Yeah.
I feel like when you approach those higher levels of consciousness without drugs, like without external stimulation, you can live in that. The mind is just a train station through which the trains of truth pass.
Yeah, I like that analogy. I wanted to ask you about something you said in your own journey, which is really interesting because you said you talked about fingerprints as being sort of
Yeah.
your what happens prior you're born, your
Yeah.
fingerprints, and there's encoding, and I'm going to use my own terminology and correct me if I'm way
Yeah.
off base. There's encoding in your fingerprints that talk about your sense of self, who maybe you're or what who
Yeah.
you're supposed to be, kind of thing. Maybe that's also in your genetics in a way because you also have your genes prior you're born. I don't know if that's if there's a correlation between genetics and fingerprints, but and my question is, you knew you wanted to be a musician. You went through this, the world being a musician.
Mhm.
You also had in the back of your mind this notion of, I'm here to help people. I can read people. I'm
Yeah.
intuitive, all these different things. So,
I'm doing both.
okay.
Well, I mean, on the other side of my house, I have 30 guitars. I have 3 pianos in my house, and a recording studio, and like, there's probably more. My equipment's probably worth more than my house, but I would like all of the music I use for breath work. I have recorded and composed myself. And if you go on the streaming services and look me up, like in 2012, I realized like, I mean, I've always continued to play music in various situations and things like that. But when I play music during the breath and breath work, and that's one of the most powerful parts of it. But I was feeling that if I'm going to take memory away from people, I don't want to be playing things that people know. And I was also hearing things, all of our culture and the music I love. Like I love Bob Dylan, but he never works in breath work because it's an identity and a narration. And like breath work needs to take you deeper into yourself, not towards the music. So I started to compose my own music that would be evocative and powerful, but you might not even remember. And once I started to do that, my first 1 hour volume was in 2012. I just kept going. I just finished I have 25 volumes up there. It's a lot of music I've done the last 14 years. So
What do you, when you're composing music that sort of goes along with the breath work, do you consider frequency or anything else? Is that important?
100%. Sound is God. I mean, not a Brahma, sound is God, but sound comes from silence. Uh, yeah, I mean, I think that first of all, forgive me if I sounds like I'm boasting. Like I'm enjoying this a lot. Like this
Okay.
is my most favorite podcast. I feel very fiery today with you,
Thank you.
and also I'm super tired. I didn't. I bought a computer yesterday, and I've had nothing but problems. So, you'd think I wouldn't be in this space, but sound is always been. I can listen to somebody's voice. I can listen to sound. Like that's what I am. I know things through sound and always have. I was not. I'm a hacky musician, but I have good taste in sound, and I know frequency. When I got to study Indian music, my teacher Terry Riley, famous jazz musician, um, he was sort of teaching an embodiment of elements because that's what Indian music is. It's there's ragas, there's music for different kinds of day, for different elements, for the rain, for and that sort of thing. And like this, I understand. And so and I have spiritual practices that I do inside the music, but I also like good crunchy guitars and like a good drummer. So it's this weird hybrid of stuff that I'm trying to. In my book, I say there are 6 stages of the breath work, and each stage that we were at the beginning of going up,
Yeah.
and so there's some kind of music for that. And then the second stage is rhythm, and then there's pushing and redemption and the deep space. So in all those stages, I have music that I've always that were inside of those stages. And you can imagine after all these years, like I know the states so well. I just match them to sound. So
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm a big fan of music too, and like for me, I started like really trying to listen to myself and see and hearing what is connecting most to me. And I'm not a musician. I'm just a fan of music. I was in music, but I don't
somebody's
play
got to
anything really
listening
well.
is a skill.
But
Yeah.
what connects to me is music that I consider sad music. So there's a certain
Like a
frequency.
good Eastern European Jew that you are, whose family was in the Holocaust. Aren't
That's
we just the most melancholic people? That's why we make such great comedians and musicians.
exactly. So I
And
was
every
just
comedian wants to be a musician, and every musician wants to be a comedian.
Yeah, it's interesting to me, and I was always thinking to myself, ah, man, I'm listening to sad music, it's making me more sad, but it's not the case. And same thing with blue notes, like people listen to blues and are like, oh, this
Yeah,
is they're telling stories. It's the notes, the frequency, even
yeah,
the rests between the notes. And I think that what you're saying really resonates with me because there's a combination of, being, breathing, and being, but combining that frequency takes you out of your mind of thinking
yeah.
and just being present in that moment and connecting everything together. So, and I was even when I was doing some coaching, I was telling people, I'll make you a playlist. And I'm not a musician, but I'll
Mm,
make a playlist for you that I
yeah,
think I really feel that this will resonate with you. And for the
yeah.
most part, it did. So I'm just wondering, that's such a
That's
brilliant
kind of
thing.
what I'm doing. When I was in grade one, they had DJ thing. Like there was a little record player about this big, and every kid got to go and be DJ for an hour, like once a week. And I got on that thing like when I was 5, 6 years old, and I was like, that's all I wanted to do. And like I ended up being the only one in the class who would be the DJ. And I'm still doing that because when people breathe, and all the facilitators of my particular technique, everybody has different gifts. If you're a massage therapist or a therapist, you will do the breath work according to what you're attuned to. But music, when people come and breathe with me, the music's a big part of it. And I also play live music at the end as well. I mean, for me, having this retreat here is that I'm actually getting, because usually I'm traveling, like I have tamboras that are huge. So suffice to say, like it's like curating a playlist for somebody to both match where they are energetically, which is you're as a coach, you're trying to bring somebody to a different vibration or frequency. I totally relate to that. But I would also say sometimes I use music just to be very disruptive or to bring things out that somebody doesn't want to, they're resistant to come out. I'll play rap music or Led Zeppelin or something if I think it's gonna, yeah,
Some death metal, maybe even.
a little death metal. You got a little
There you
Kiss
go.
in the background. I mean, Stevie Wonder, I
Yeah, yeah.
believe when I fall in love, it'll be forever. I played that during the breath. I mean, people's songs, sometimes songs, so singers, particularly for those of us who come from this culture, like people will just be the immediate association so powerful.
I
Yeah.
wanted to ask you another question about your work because you said an hour of breathing. Is there anything that somebody can do to sort of incorporate breath work in their daily routine that may not be
An
like
hour's worth.
an hour's
Well,
worth or
yeah.
it doesn't
Well,
work. You have to do.
yeah. So an hour is only to be done with a facilitator. It'd be
Mm,
dangerous to do it on your own, and it's a subjective experience. And the relationship between you and the facilitators, the facilitator gives you permission to really go into things and also to maybe push you a little bit into those things. So um, the I started experimenting during the pandemic with these 3, 4 minute. I've always said that after 5 minutes, you have to go all the way. Otherwise, you're going to bring stuff up and not get rid of it. So I started creating some 4 minute tracks, and on the front page of our website, there's a curated track that you can do with me, and you could do it every day. It's so powerful, just even the 3 minutes. But I would say that if you wanted to do that as a daily practice, last year I put out all the volumes I put out were 1 hour, like with all the 6 stages in them. But last year I put out an album of each stage. So the second stage, which is rhythm, is mostly a 4 minute rhythmic tracks. They're very stabilizing, and they kind of like, if you want to just pick any of those tracks and lay down and kind of breathe to it, and possibly, also just read my book before you do it. And my previous book, A Liberated Life, I have that here. The I think it's chapter 5. It's free on Spotify and Audible and stuff. I basically say everything you need to know about how to do the technique and why I do it the way I do it in the philosophy. So it's good to be an educated breather.
Yeah.
You can also just I have a newsletter and I do almost every day. So if you don't want to hear from someone every day, then don't get on that. But I there's a lots of stuff I'm in my newsletters, and there's a free forum. People can write and ask questions. So there's lots of opportunity to kind of try things out without doing the hour.
Can you incorporate breathwork with meditation, or is it two separate things that should be
Well,
siloed?
I think if depending on how you define meditation, if meditation
I'll define it. I'm sorry to
is
interrupt. I'll
like
define it.
vipassana,
So I do TM. I do.
uh,
I've done for
yeah,
years. I did transcendental. I took a course. I've done it, but
yeah,
now I'm not as consistent. I used to be like twice a day for 20 minutes a day,
yeah.
morning and evening. It varies now. So is it something that I can incorporate at the end of my meditation, beginning, or Vipassana, as you said?
Well, for one, anybody, we're all doctors and patients at the same time. So we have to prescribe, we have to, having a spiritual practice, I think is the most important thing in life because if you don't practice on a daily basis, you're not going to really train yourself to become who you're meant to become, no matter how much trauma you clear. Secondly, without a guide, you're really not going to develop in your practice.
Yeah.
So anybody can do whatever they want, but if somebody's asking me, I'm only going to give someone a practice in relationship to the relationship having with them and that practice. So in the reality of your question, say anybody could do whatever they want. Like I think breathwork is a beautiful addition to lots of practices if you want that. And I know people who breathe and then sit, but I would say that the breathwork itself, the breathwork that I do, is a form of meditation because if meditation is to witness the arisings without getting attached to them, I had a facilitator once said he said effigy breathwork is meditation on steroids because you're just accelerating what arises while you're sitting there breathing. So if you're doing I'll skip TM for a second. I'll just speak because Vipassana is more what's the word, like generic, I guess, if you will. And there's no mantra or anything like that. But if somebody's just watching their breath and they're watching their mind, that's meditation. If you're doing this kind of breath work that we did, that's all you're doing, except that instead of just watching your breath, you're actually giving the mind something to do, which is to breathe really full.
Yeah, activating.
So,
And I'm
yeah,
glad you said this whole thing about a facilitator. It's an analogy is exactly what you just said. Vipassana, I can anybody can get guided meditation on YouTube and
yeah.
do, but when you do a class and you go to TM like for and you have a mantra and so there's somebody that's guiding you through to do it correctly. And I think it's really, really important to have a guide no matter what you do because
100%. I still have a teacher, and I feel like you, there's no practice, including mine, that's any more important than the human engine of a relationship between a teacher and student. I'm both teacher and student, so I can speak to both of them and just say that it's the power of the relationship. The method is the boat that gets across the river. And I think that people at the beginning get stuck on answers, solving problems, and methods, but or with some kind of like reverence, some parental thing with a teacher. But the real value of a guide is to be able to help you to know what you should be doing when to take the management, to be your case manager.
yeah,
Because if you're, even as you get older, which you're in your 50s, like you can you can prescribe to yourself pretty well. But if you're not doing your practice twice a day anymore and it's falling off, one of two things is going on. Either you need a different practice, or it's not enlivened because you don't have a teacher
Exactly.
inspiring you to take that next step. And I know that this is why I'm not in a relationship currently, and I like the work the way I do, because I am that person for people, and it's as intimate a relationship as you could possibly have with someone. And on the other side, as a student, like I want to be accountable to somebody outside myself because I want to be called out to what it is that I'm missing. So I don't
Yeah.
think there's anything more important than that. And it's more important than any particular practice.
Yeah, I completely agree with you.
Yeah.
Having an accountability partner, whoever that may be in life, is super key to make sure that that person's,
That
holding.
hopefully they have some experience too, not just your best
Yes.
friend.
Yeah, yeah, agreed, agreed.
Yeah.
So I have a few questions I ask all my guests. Yeah, you kind of answered one of them already because the first question I ask, if you remember the very first concert you attended, and
Yeah.
what was it? Guess who? I recall. What was the last concert you attended?
Uh, I saw, I'll mention two concerts. I mean, I haven't hardly gone to concerts, but then I've four concerts I went to during the pandemic. I saw Bob Dylan, 81, 82 years old. The lights were practically on. He was enunciating so strongly, but he came out and everybody was playing in a different key and it sounded like they were kicking over their instruments. And I really wanted to go see Dylan one more time. I spent $1,000. I got fourth row seats. He comes out. There's an upright piano halfway back the stage with three water bottles in front of his face. And I thought, here I am with Bob Dylan, like as we all are disappointed that he never lives up to your expectations.
Can I jump in on that
Yeah.
Bob Dylan thing? So last time I saw Bob Dylan, I'm pretty sure that was the last time. It was a Desert Trip, which was this big
Oh
concert.
yeah, yeah, that he
So,
did with Pink Floyd
yeah,
and
yeah, it was
not Pink
Roger.
Floyd,
Yeah, it was Roger
Rolling
Waters.
Stones. Yeah,
It was Roger Waters. Rolling Stones won
yeah,
that night. The
yeah,
Who, etc.
yeah,
Anyway, he came out and he sort of faced the back of the stage. He never even looked at the audience. He
yeah,
sat sort of
yeah.
sideways and looked backwards. So yeah, I completely
You
get it.
have to accept what he is, and so that was an amazing concert for that. Then I saw Bill Frisell, guitar player, this far away from me at a tiny little place, and I it was one of the most altered states I'd ever been in. He played one thing for an hour and he didn't stop and then he just got up and left and I don't know where I was. So that was that. Then the last concert I saw was Tedeschi Trucks.
Mhm.
And it was really interesting because, and I bought really great seats and then I couldn't find somebody to go with. And I asked the leader of the Sufi spiritual lineage. He lives in San Rafael, and he's an Indian musician. He's a Jewish guy from New York, but and his parents were in the Holocaust. But he studied Indian music, and it turned out that Derek Trucks has been to my hometown, San Rafael, and studied Indian music, and it really influenced the way he plays slide. He plays like an Indian
I
musician.
think he's one of the best slide players ever. I saw
F,
Tedeschi Trucks. I
yeah,
mean, what an amazing player. I
yeah,
was blown away because I was also sitting
yeah.
right in front of the stage.
So I was I think eighth row, and I went with this man. He's 77 years old who studied Indian music for his life, and like he's a little not that in. I mean, he's actually a hippie. He came on a VW bus from New York to L.A. with Ram Dass. Ram Dass was going to be his guru, and he ended up becoming a Sufi instead. But yeah, and so I kind of was just looking through different lenses, and that was an amazing concert. But I also felt like there's something about concerts that are really exhausting.
Yeah.
Even though I had incredible seats, and they were, I mean, every single person in that band was such a phenomenal presence and performer, and they all got to do stuff. So that was
Yeah.
Tedeschi
Great.
Trucks. Yeah.
All right.
And then I
So
saw Lizzie McAlpine with my daughter, and she's a young female singer-songwriter, and she wore headphones the whole time with the band, like to recreate her album. And she was obviously has totally terrified of being with an audience.
performing.
It
Yeah.
was fascinating. 8,000 screaming young girls and like three or four guys with gray hair who were with their
I
daughters.
remember doing that with my daughter too when she was younger. Another
How old's
music
your
question.
daughter?
She's 20. Yeah,
20. Okay. Yeah.
she's in your neck of the woods. She goes to Berkeley up there.
Oh,
So
yeah. I was at the Berkeley Bowls where I saw Tedeschi Trucks.
yeah.
Yeah.
Um, for the next year, you have to listen to 5 albums. You can only listen to these 5 albums. You don't have to remember the name of the album. It could
Yeah.
be a Bob Dylan album, or
Yeah.
what would be those 5 albums. Now, and I realize I'm capturing a moment in time
Yeah.
because in an
Yeah.
hour that could change. So
Yeah, yeah. Because if you ask me, like, what are some of my favorite records, they're not necessarily things I'm going to listen to. But right now, well, one, Philip Glass made an album in his house during the pandemic. It's him playing his music, and I can't stop playing it. It's so unbelievable. It's so one of the most powerful albums I've ever listened to. I also happened upon a Dr. John album they released posthumously called Frankie and Johnny, which is something they didn't put out. It's just him playing the piano and singing. So 2 albums with piano and singing. And can I just say what I've been listening to? Because I just got this new
you
Eric
say whatever you
Clapton
want.
album.
Yeah.
Eric Clapton album called Meanwhile. It just came out. I don't know if I would want to listen to it for a year, but I always love Eric Clapton has such great sensibilities, even as a pop singer. And like, it's kind of a pop blues album. And also he's older. I so far, really liking it. So then I'll just say, Paul Westerberg stereo is a mono and stereo. I don't ever get tired of playing that album. And then for my last album, I would say, how about Keith Jarrett Radiance? It's super atonal and weird and like just yeah, it's a lot of piano music, but it's not that I listen to a lot of piano music, but right now maybe I am.
Yeah, that's interesting. I don't know that one. I know that one.
It
Check out.
it's just there's not a single melody in a scale that you would recognize. It's you just have to get in it and accept it for what it is, and it's really atonal. But I've been listening to it for years, and I never get tired of it. So
Cool. All right. So final question. Please describe what your room looked like growing up.
I feel like I could pull out something and share screen with you, but orange shag carpet, like the 1972 when my father got the job at the contact lens company, he forced my mother, who was like a non-archetype, to like buy stuff. So it was orange, like orange and brown shag carpet. I had a bright blue, like turquoise blue, kind of this color bedspread. And my curtains were red, white, and blue stripes. And that was my bedroom.
Any art on the wall? Any posters or anything like that? That
No,
remember? No.
nothing. And my parents had like some artwork in the dining room, which were just these sort of ornate Asian looking things. And I don't know where they came from, but my family weren't art people per se, but I have lots of Chinese calligraphy. My daughter did that when she was 16, and I have some of her stuff up on the walls.
Yeah.
And I got a Banksy, not like an authentic print, but I have a
Yeah.
Banksy because I was like, I just need to have that message on the walls of my house. So
Cool.
these are great
Right.
questions.
Elijah, where can people engage with you, get your books, get your content, wherever you want to share?
Yeah, so Effiji.com or effijibreath.com, EFFIJI. that's self-explanatory. My book is now we're just doing print and demand on Amazon because it's just easier and I can do it around the world. So and then my name, Elijah Nissenboim, all the streaming services, and both my recent 2 books are in audio book.
Cool.
So yeah.
And for my audience,
YouTube, we have YouTube and some crappy social media. I have a business partner, and she and I, we just can't do social media like with any vigor, but we do have an Instagram and Facebook
cool.
account.
And for my audience, thank you for listening. Thank you for
Yeah.
staying with us. Thank you for all the wonderful reviews. I'm always checking and messages, and thank you for the 5 stars. Thank you for the 4 stars. It's fine. I'm always looking to improve, and I also appreciate you.
And thank you for the 1 stars. You would thank them for the 1 stars
I
too.
don't have any 1 stars, but I will. Even if you leave a 1 star, any stars,
Yeah.
any feedback is great.
You
because
like
they're always-
feedback.
Yeah, it's a great learning experience. I'm always looking to see what I can do to improve and get better. So, Elijah, thank you so much for this. Really
Thank you.
appreciate it. It's great.
Yeah.
Hey everyone, thank you for watching and listening. And don't forget to hit the subscribe button, share this episode, and hit that bell. Like, comment. I so appreciate that. And check me out on social under Len May or Len May DNA. Find out more on LinkedIn or lenmaycoaching.com. And remember, everything is personal.